Tories at war over Boris Johnson's refusal to apologise for comparing burkas to letterboxes. Boris Johnson's burka broadside plunged the Conservatives into civil war tonight. Senior figures called for him to apologise or lose the party whip for saying fully veiled Muslim women resembled letterboxes or bank robbers. Ruth Davidson, who is seen as a potential rival to Mr. Johnson for the Tory leadership, said questioning the burqa was like challenging the rights of Christians to wear a crucifix. But Mr. Johnson, who is on holiday, refused to back down. His supporters claim the row is being exploited by Tory Remainers furious about his position on Brexit. As the row went into a fourth day, the row began on Monday when, in a Daily Telegraph column, Mr. Johnson compared Muslim women who wear face-covering veils to letterboxes and bank robbers. The former Foreign Secretary said he was opposed to banning the burqa in public places, but added, "It is absolutely ridiculous that people should choose to go around looking like letterboxes. If a constituent came to my MP's surgery with her face obscured, I should feel fully entitled to ask her to remove it. If a female student turned up at school or at a university lecture looking like a bank robber, then ditto." The remarks sparked outrage from Muslim groups and MPs who accused him of fanning the flames of Islamophobia. Over the past 3 days, Tory and Labour figures have taken to the airwaves to condemn Mr. Johnson. Yesterday, Culture Secretary Jeremy Wright stepped up the attacks, claiming it was wrong for Mr. Johnson to describe the burqa as ridiculous and oppressive. He told the BBC, "That's the sort of language I think we should try to avoid using." Miss Davidson, who leads the Scottish Tories, said, "This wasn't an off-the-cuff slip," he wrote a column. "He knew exactly what he was doing, and I think it crossed from being provocative and starting a debate and actually it became rude and gratuitous. If you use the analogy of Christianity, would you ever write in the Daily Telegraph that you should have a debate about banning Christians from wearing crucifixes? It's the same argument, but it's in a different faith, so why are the parameters different for one faith and not the other?" That's where I think you start getting these questions of what constitutes anti-Semitism, what constitutes Islamophobia, and if you have that comparator in your mind, then that perhaps is a better guidance for not what you should or shouldn't say, but how you frame the debate. I agree with the point of his piece, which was you shouldn't ban the burqa, the niqab, the hijab. I don't think we should ban it, but what he said was a gratuitously offensive way of saying it. Lord Sheikh, the founder and president of the Conservative Muslim Forum, demanded the Conservative whip be withdrawn from Mr. Johnson. He said he had written to party chairman Brandon Lewis calling for severe action. "To a certain extent they're racist, in a way it is racist," the peer told Sky News. "These words are very inflammatory. They will cause problems with race relations. I believe it will encourage bigotry in this country." The Conservative Party last night declined to comment on whether it would begin formal disciplinary action to investigate Mr. Johnson. Former party chairman Lord Pickles suggested he had been treated more lightly than other members might be. He told BBC News, "If this was a councillor from Scunthorpe or Middlesbrough or somewhere, I'm not entirely sure he would have been given the amount of slack and, in truth, he wouldn't have been given the amount of attention that Boris has got." Writing in The Guardian, Baroness Worsley said Mr. Johnson's comments send out a message that Muslim women are fair game. She added, "What starts as useful targets for colorful political language and the odd bit of toxic campaigning ends up in attacks on our streets." He set out a liberal position, but he did it in a very outright way. This allowed him to dog whistle, to say to particular elements of the party that he's tough on Muslims. Yet again, he's trying to have his cake and eat it. So, as much as Johnson thinks he's being his usual clever self, he's helping to create an environment in which hate crime is more likely. Every time incidents like this occur in the party and there are no consequences, it sends out a clear message that you can get away with Islamophobia. It means that ugly comments can actually enhance reputations, rather than ruin them. If my party follows up on a demand for an apology with real action, then these comments would eventually become rare. But Nadine Dorries, a backbench Tory MP, said the backlash showed Mr. Johnson's rivals were terrified of him challenging the Prime Minister. She told Talk Radio, "People who are outraged, who are utterly terrified, know that at some stage, any day soon, Boris may make a challenge for the leadership in the position in No 10. All those who are going to come out, particularly on the Remain side of the Brexit argument, are going to come out and they are going to attack him in force." The Prime Minister's statement that some people were offended. Yes, some people were offended, but they are not people who would vote for Boris or ever vote Conservative anyway. The first opinion poll on the row showed backing for Mr. Johnson. According to the survey by Sky Data, 60% believe it was not racist to compare Muslim women wearing burkas to bank robbers or letterboxes, while 33% said it was. 48% thought Mr. Johnson should not apologize for his remarks, compared with 45% who thought he should. Mr. Johnson wrote the newspaper article after Denmark became the latest European country to impose a ban on wearing burkas in public. Almost 60% of respondents said they supported enacting such a ban in the UK, with 26% opposed. For the poll, Sky Data interviewed a nationally representative sample of 1,649 customers by text message. Tory MP Connor Burns, who served as Mr. Johnson's parliamentary private secretary, said his critics had an agenda. He tweeted, "My memory may be letting me down, but I don't recall too many of those piling in to attack Boris Johnson lining up to help him promote the international education of women and girls, which was one of his major priorities when Foreign Secretary. We are now into full bandwagon jumping territory on Boris Johnson article." Seeing some of the tweets from colleagues desperate not to get left behind, I can't see they can even have read it. If they did, they clearly didn't understand it. For Boris, Gail Little, I totally stand by Boris Johnson's comments, although there could have been a less controversial way of saying what many of us feel. Anne Elphick, free speech is more important than having to walk on eggshells around other people's religions or points of view. I hope Boris doesn't apologize. I applaud his bravery in these repressive times. What's happened to British liberalism? Be still. Whilst Boris might have chosen his words a little more carefully, he is only saying what a lot of us feel on the subject and has to be admired for that. He has nothing to apologize for. Jane Young, I could not agree more with Boris Johnson's remarks about women wearing the burqa in our country. He has carefully thought through the situation from both sides and does not agree with banning its wearing in our country, as it is in so many others. He simply expects it to be removed so that communication is not hampered. As we are all aware, nonverbal communication is vital for a meaningful conversation to take place. I think he is being more than reasonable. Well said, Boris. Leeskev, Bedford, brilliant, well said. Admire him for actually saying what the masses think. Helen Strafford, Norwich, I'm getting fed up with how PC everything is going. We need more politicians like Boris. Gillith A. Teesside, comments that people should be allowed to wear what they want are missing the point. This is not about fashion. Every day I see people who look like they got dressed in the dark, but that is their choice and they may feel the same about me. This is about covering your face and thereby hiding your identity in public. Boris is right to highlight